So I have to put my glasses on. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Again, my name is Diana Alarcon. I'm the director of the Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, otherwise known as NDOT. Welcome, everyone, to an event I wish we did not need to have. An event to honor people who have lost their lives while traveling in our city, and to honor those who have forever been impacted by traffic violence on our streets. First off, I'd like to thank everyone who showed up tonight. To the families who participated in our documentary short films, we cannot thank you enough for allowing us to share your stories. To those who came to learn more about Vision Zero in Nashville, the culture change we are so desperately need to embrace begins with each of you. I'd like to also thank our Metro Council, who unanimously endorsed our Vision Zero plan and advocate for more complete streets in each of their districts. I want to also thank my team at NDOT, who are so passionate about the work of achieving zero deaths on our roadways. To Khalil, Nate, and Meredith for eagerly joining us on stage to discuss this important topic. And to our friends and partners at Metro Parks for allowing us to use this great community facility to host our event. And last but not least, to our mayor, who has been the ultimate champion of safer streets and who I know works every day to make a Vision Zero a reality. The work we are doing under his leadership is bringing visibility, tangible change in this city. We have a long way to go, but I'm confident we will get there. We will save lives, and we will make our streets safer for everyone, people walking, biking, driving, and accessing transit. I'd like to welcome Mayor O'Connell to the stage to speak to all of us this evening. Everybody, a round of applause, please, for Mayor Freddie O'Connell.
Thank you, Director Alarcon, and I would ask for one more celebration of Courtney Stone and so many of the people at NDOT who have committed to this work. Will you all help me celebrate our Department of Transportation? Now, one thing I really appreciate as we get this started is how much of this is actually about principles of design. And as you look at the idea of what we're working on in Nashville, there's thoughtful design even in the logo of how we take into account people of different abilities and all the modes of transportation we expect to be occurring in our public rights of way. And I think that's one of the most important considerations about Vision Zero, is that this is about infrastructure choices and design that are intended to keep people safer. And we have not, as a city, historically always done this. So thank you to Director Alarcon. Thank you again to our entire team at NDOT. And again, a special thank you to the people that have allowed us to share stories as part of what we're going to experience this evening. Now, earlier this year, as a reflection on the importance of Vision Zero, I attended the 7th annual pedestrian memorial organized by Walk Bike Nashville and Safe Streets Nashville. There, I offered condolences to the families and friends of the 38 pedestrians who lost their lives while simply trying to cross streets in the city over the past year. Before last year, 3 of the previous 4 years were record years for pedestrian fatalities in Nashville. We are slowly killing each other through infrastructure choices that fail to take into account how we can all move around the city safely. And the reason that I was proud to commit publicly to Vision Zero several years ago when I was on Metro Council, and why I was proud to serve alongside a mayor, Mayor Cooper originally, but even before that, I know Mayor Briley, Mayor Berry undertook policies that were intended to guide us to this point, and certainly alongside several other members of Metro Council, to commit to Vision Zero is because one pedestrian death is too many, especially when we think of these as preventable deaths. So in my first set of executive orders we issued back in January, we reissued our green and complete streets policy, but we expanded it, offering guidance to Diana and her team, much of which they actually were excited about collaborating with us on. And then after a frustrating episode, and again, thinking about how we do this, a few years ago, we had a discussion about one of the most dangerous corridors in the city, Nolensville Pike. Unfortunately, that discussion was driven by parking capacity at the Nashville Zoo. And while our family has been members of the zoo for years and we love the zoo, this was a request to spend $15 million of public money only on parking at the zoo. And to me, this was not good enough, knowing that this was a very dangerous corridor. So we fought for another round of local funding that would support better corridor improvements and community transit centers around the city that could be better connected with safer infrastructure. And we won that fight. And in winning that fight, we won something even more important. We won access to a Safer Streets for All federal grant that meant $13 additional million coming from our federal partners. We brought our own money back to Nashville to invest in safer streets for this community. It is possible to make these investments. And so then, on top of that, in our first capital spending plan earlier this year, approved unanimously by the Metro Council in February, we delivered the city's overall largest transportation investment in 7 years, and it included $12.5 million specifically for Vision Zero transportation safety initiatives. It is our biggest single investment yet in the concept of Vision Zero. And so it was great to have our transportation planning team involved, Diana's team and NDOT, and certainly the Metro Council. But the incremental improvements we've been making over the past few years, resulting in that peak of 2022 being the deadliest year on record in the history of Metro for people just trying to cross the street, is clearly not keeping pace with the growth trajectory and safety needs of this city. It wasn't 10 years ago when we started to see a surge in growth, and it certainly isn't today. The problem, unfortunately, has gotten worse by almost every measure, whether you measure in minutes, injuries, or fatalities. And this is why this has been a top priority of mine for years, including when I was on the Metro Council. It's why it's been a top priority for our team since we started about a year ago. And it's why we have a comprehensive transportation improvement program on the ballot in November, one of whose core principles is safety. Choose How You Move, that plan focused on sidewalks, signals, service, and safety, would deliver 39 miles of complete streets. And these are street designs that include safety as a basis. And the nice thing about this is, in city after city, when you pursue complete streets and Vision Zero policy, what you see is an improved business ecosystem. Small local businesses on corridors like Clarksville, like Gallatin, like Dickerson, like Murfreesboro, like Nolensville, start to see business improvement, sales increase, jobs increase, simply because the communities that these businesses are located in are actually safely connected to them. Our program includes 39 miles of complete streets, including upgrades to 33 miles of what, thanks to the work of Vision Zero and the task force, have identified as part of a difficult and frustrating and challenging high injury network, but it's one we know we can attack directly. Complete streets are a way we can proactively meet our Vision Zero goals while making sure that all of these modes of transportation are available to everyone. It's the best chance we have, passing Choose How You Move this November 5th, to put more sidewalks and safe infrastructure into more communities beyond anything else we'll do in one stroke as a city. And beyond local governance, that Safer Streets for All example is key. We will repatriate more than $1 billion of money that we are currently sending to other cities to invest in themselves. And I, frankly, am tired of Nashvillians paying to make streets in Austin and Charlotte and Denver safer. We should be paying those dollars back into our own infrastructure and making the city better. I think, to Diana's point, my hope is that you understand some of how deeply personal this issue is to me. Having experienced the city for 3.5 years en route to home ownership, car-free, it is important to have access to safe infrastructure in all parts of the city. My hope is we've designed a program for all of us to consider that gives us the best chance to honor the memories of those we've lost this year. So we want to serve a 24/7 workforce, our students, our seniors, the residents of Nashville. It's how we connect to each other and to opportunity. It's how we do a better job of protecting those people whose stories you're about to hear. Thank you so much for being here tonight to learn why Vision Zero is so important and to think about how we design a better future and choose it. Thank you.
Okay, and now we are going to hear from Kim Milligan. Kim Milligan is going to honor her daughter who lost her life to traffic violence. She wasn't able to be here in person because she doesn't live in Nashville, but she wanted to send a message to everyone, and we're going to play that now. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Kim Milligan, and I'd like to take a moment to honor the victims and families affected by roadway tragedies in Nashville, including my own daughter, Alyssa. Alyssa was a bright light in our lives, and losing her is causing unimaginable pain. Today we remember not just her, but all the lives taken too soon on our roads. Thank you so much for your commitment to Vision Zero and saving lives and preventing others from having to walk this brutal grief journey. Please join me in 30 seconds of silence to honor Alyssa and all the others we've lost, and to stand with the families left behind.
Hello again. When NDOT and the team first started talking about approaches to Vision Zero, and I want to also share there was a task force that was put together that was made up of our council folks as well as community members. We knew we needed to address traffic safety in many ways and in a number of directions as well. There are some national best practices with the 5 E's, which is focusing in on engineering. That's how you design the road, complete street initiatives. There's education, encouragement, evaluation, enforcement. And the Federal Highway Administration also has what they call a safe approach system that you can also apply to like your major highway system. So many different approaches can help. All of this also has a continual under alignment to that, which leads to equity. Staff began developing plans and strategies, taking the lead from our task force around each of those areas. And so when you drive around the city, you'll see NDOT staff that's currently refreshing your crosswalks, installing rectangular rapid beacons, auditing safety conditions along major corridors, and I want to say thank you to our partners at TDOT, and engaging with the public and propose designs on how we can do some major transformational complete street projects, like one that we actually have been undergoing on Gallatin Main Vision Zero project. But another essential part of our work is educating the public about traffic safety and about how to share the road, and that we call these crashes, not accidents, because crashes can be prevented, as the mayor had specified. Education is sometimes can be dismissed as we learn stuff. Like, for example, during driver ed. Everybody remember driver ed, right? Everybody remember taking the test when they were 15 years old? Yeah? How many of you have looked at the driver's ed book since you were 15 years old? A few hands. Great. But the rules of our road have changed dramatically over the years. Does anybody know a rule that has changed? Such as, I'm just going to share an easy one, that if you see a bicyclist in the road and the speed limit is 45 miles per hour or less, you must share the road. The cyclist has the priority on the roadway. And also, what that means is you must give them 3-foot clearance. So if they're in front of you, you give them 3 foot in front of you, back from them. So please don't sit on their tail. And it also means when you pass them, you're going to give them 3-foot clearance on the passing. Those are some of the rules that have actually changed. And there's more rules besides that. So it's really important for us to have this education conversation about the rules of the road and how we can all share the road. Because in the end, if we're going to make Vision Zero really successful, it's a culture change and it's a change in behavior. It's also, in the change of behavior, comes down to what we've identified as our 3 major items that have led to these crashes that have occurred that have left people, unfortunately, in loss of life and a soul in our city and our county. And that is, the first one is actually speeding. So we always ask folks, please do the speed limit. The second one is actually driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Uber, Lyft, taxi. Folks, call a friend, call a neighbor. And then the last one is also distracted. You know, since the phones came into our lives, we really all pay attention to them. But hey, folks, when you get in your car, or even on your bike, or even walking, put them in your pocket. Pay attention to your surroundings. We want to make sure everyone gets home alive. So when the team came to me and shared that they wanted to approach Vision Zero education through the lens of storytelling, I agree. A driver's manual is important, but it's impersonal. A few folks raised their hand. We should study up on the rules of the road, but we should also sear into our minds that our actions have consequences, and those consequences impact families forever. If you're interested in learning more about Vision Zero or feel passionate about the work I've described, we're currently accepting applications on our Vision Zero Advisory Committee. There's more information on our webpage. Please go to it, let us know. We have some members that are in the audience, so I want to do a quick shout out to our Vision Zero Advisory Board members that are here and say thank you for your dedication and your passion. I truly appreciate it, and I'd like for everyone to give a round of applause to those. Could you please stand up if you sit on the advisory board? Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's serving on that committee. I'm extremely grateful, and I'm also appreciate the engagement around creating those safer streets for us. I'm also very grateful for everyone who has shared their stories with us. It is only through this kind of true vulnerability that we can really affect change. In the coming months, you'll see these stories shared on social media and on television. But you're getting a first look here tonight. Once the films end, we will welcome WPLN, Kahil, I hope I don't mess this up, and if I do, I apologize very much ahead of time. Ikalona? Close, darn it. I want you to know everybody messes up my last name too. Who will lead us in a panel discussion on Vision Zero. So with that, we will start the film. Sorry, I thought I missed something, but I didn't. We'll start the film. Thank you very much.
This is a picture of Josh. Handsome young man. He was our youngest child. He loved superheroes, DC and Marvel. He was generous. He had donated over 7.5 gallons of blood to the Red Cross. He was a kind, caring human being.
Where he was walking, the street lights overhang Antioch Pike. They don't overhang any of the side streets. He was only about 3/4 of a mile from the house when he was hit.
We know right now our leading cause of crashes is due to speed. So we really are asking our community as a whole, slow down. We know the second cause of crashes occurring that lead to deaths and serious injuries are those folks that are driving under the influence. So if you decide to drink, take an Uber. 5 years ago, we didn't have Uber. We have Uber now. And then the last crash we know that is causing deaths and serious injuries is distracted driving. When we all were learning to drive, your parents would say, don't touch the radio, 2 hands on the wheel. Go back, do the same thing. We're all great drivers, but we need to all be better.
Please retrain your brain to think, is there anyone I should be aware of? Is there anyone I should be aware of?
You don't want to be the one to hit a pedestrian. It's going to affect your life. And it's going to affect the life of the parents.
On the morning of October the 25th, 2022, I was actually on my way to a Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce annual meeting. And I was at the pedestrian crosswalk where I had crossed 1,000 times before. The first car stopped. I stepped out, went across, was well established in the crosswalk when the second car came along and did not stop.
Back in, I want to say it was probably the late 30s or early 40s. It's actually when they started developing interstates. And they built interstate to actually move more items. But when they did that, the car was also coming up and it was available. And so we completely took the transportation element away from the land use. And that's what's caused a lot of these crashes to start occurring, is we weren't building it for those other modes that many people still use to this day.
What you're seeing right here, this is hours and hours and hours of physical therapy, of people helping me. My hand, I could not grip anything. Now I can almost do the Scout of Honor, the Scout badge. I really feel for people who have been hurt or have disabilities because, you just never know what's going to happen. And then you have to work so hard to get some semblance of where you were back. Drivers need to slow down, pay attention, not try to beat the light, and just really be observant and cognizant of everything that's going on around. My goal is to walk those capital steps again, and I'm doing that before the end of 2024.
My daughter was riding her bicycle with a friend on Highway 100, and they were going to a park, and she was hit by a truck and killed. When you send your child away to school, you expect them to come home, and the journey that I've been on and our family has been on in grief and just the struggles this has created makes me passionate about road safety because it is an otherworldly amount of suffering. Protecting these cyclists and pedestrians is, for me, a chance to save a family from this brutal grief journey.
Her friends say she was a really strong rider. Alyssa Milligan, biking here with some other experienced cyclists, sadly was hit and killed by a pickup 4 days ago. She was on...
Alisa, it was so nice to welcome her in our club because I was like, Okay, as part of my service to the club, I really want to involve younger people. It was a big debt, and this is a public space. The streets belong to all of us. It's not just me because I have the biggest car and the strongest or the fastest.
We all know we will continue to visit a place if we feel very safe. We look at why is the behavior that? There's so many different opportunities, and that's why we really have the conversation with the community about what is the best practice about feeling safe in their community.
We need to share the roads, and it really, really changed our perspective.
3 inches would have saved her life. A foot for sure would have. 2 feet, she'd be here right here giving you the interview and not me.
Just being aware of everything around you and anticipating the worst is critical. Burying your baby is brutal. You don't want to cause anybody to have to do that. That's a brutal journey for a parent.
As a first-generation American and as a child of immigrants myself, I relied a lot on public transportation, just like many of my students. And so in college, I actually had to take several buses and walk many miles while I was in school. And this was challenging for me because there were no sidewalks, and it was really difficult for a young woman alone out in the world for the first time to be able to access a lot of the roads and transportation on my own. And so I am a community advocate, and I advocate for my students, for public transportation, and for education. For my students, safety is very important. Those who live along the corridors, for example, on Nolensville, many of my students live in those areas. And so we want to make sure that our students can safely walk to the bus stops and be able to access public transportation so that they can make it to class on time.
Information on a school bus crash. What happened about an hour ago on Thompson Lane in Nashville. Metro police say a pickup truck ran a red light. The bus driver was taken to the hospital, but is expected to...
Many of our high-entry networks, which is Nolensville, it's also Murfreesboro, it's Gallatin, it's Dickerson. We have schools that are actually right there on those, and people fly through them. And when we've gone out and looked at the land use and looked at the transportation, we see a highway going through the middle of a community. We applied for a $13 million grant called Safe Streets for All from the U.S. DOT, and we were successful in getting it. So we're going to be adding crosswalks, we're going to be adding pedestrian signalization, we're looking at adding in bicycle lanes as well. We're going to be looking at not reducing lanes, but narrowing the lanes so the cars move slower, and we just want to create a safe space. When we create a public transportation system that accommodates for a greater society, we know that it'll increase tourism and the economy and just create a great energy and be better for our environment.
Daryl is a Memphis native, born and raised. I'm an advocate. I am a triathlete. I am a recent world champion, 70.3 Ironman. My journey with cycling started about almost 10 years ago. I met a friend at the gym. We went to college together. I was already running a lot. Met some people through running and kind of brought me over to what they would call the dark side. A few older guys who kind of took me under their wings and let me borrow a bike, and the rest was history. Back in 2016, I was cycling in Green Hills, going down Hillsborough Road. A young lady was in a turn lane. I was in a bike lane. She turned from the turn lane and turned directly into me and T-boned me. Probably put me out of cycling for about a year, 2 years max. It was just lack of awareness.
From a runner's perspective, if you're running on a busy street You always want to run toward traffic and not with traffic. That way you can see the cars that are coming to you and hopefully they can see you. From a car's perspective, I mean, they just need to be more alert.
We're looking at all aspects and all opportunities to reduce the conflicts between the pedestrian and the car, the bicycle and the car, because those are our most vulnerable users on the roadway. Those are the folks that if they are hit by that 4,000-ton machine, if that car is going fast, they've reduced their chances of survival. And they could be left with serious injuries, but those serious injuries affect them the rest of their life. That's why sidewalks are also very important. It's much safer to be on a sidewalk with appropriate lighting, whether it's a pedestrian lighting or street lighting, because you'll be seen. That's your space as a pedestrian.
Now that we have more bike lanes, I would say keeping the bike lanes clean.
A lot of cyclists, or runners, when they're in the bike lane, and there's trash and there's sticks and stones, guess what they're going to do? They're going to ride in the street.
If you are behind somebody who's riding a bike, please just give them a little space. It is the most scariest thing to have a car behind you. There's no rush to where we all trying to go. I think everybody should be able to get home safely, whether they're on a bike, in a car, on a motorcycle, or running.
What'd y'all think? Pretty moving, right? So when we were initially putting together the run of show for this event, the voice that popped into my mind was the voice that I hear almost every day at noon at work, listening to This Is Nashville. And I could not be more pleased to introduce Khalil Ekulona, who is here to moderate our panel on Vision Zero.
How's it going? Awesome. Thank you very much for having me here. Yeah, we're going to get it going. I'll introduce everyone. All right, so she's been up here on stage before. She's coming back again. I'd like to introduce Diana Alarcon to come up. She's director of NDOT. Joining her is Nate McDowell, the founder of Music City Dope Peddlers. Nate, come on up. After him, we have Meredith Montgomery, Executive Director of Walk Bike Nashville. And last but not least, the 10th Mayor of Nashville, Davidson County, Freddie O'Connell. All right. Welcome, everyone. Now, we have some questions designed, and there's also audience questions. You guys have quite a bit. I'm going to try to get through all of these and put some of our design questions to the side. So we're going to do this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with This Is Nashville, or me necessarily, but we're going to have this conversation, but it's going to be as informal as possible. I think, therefore, we can get true information and communication out. All right, I'm going to start because this was handed to me, and I figured this would be the best question to begin with. And anyone who would like to answer this, please do. Question is, why has Nashville adopted Vision Zero when it has failed in other cities?
I will gladly take that one.
Go for it.
It actually has not failed in other cities. As a matter of fact, Holcomb, New Jersey, last year actually put on record 0 fatalities that occur. Oh, there it is. 0 fatalities that occurred in their community. So it is something that you can actually accomplish. I do think there has been some challenges with some cities as far as staying up with what all is going on, continuing the conversation with their community. A lot of great lessons that we can take into consideration as we move forward with our Vision Zero plan. It is a 5-year plan. We should be updating it every 5 years. So going into year 4, we actually start the new process of updating it And it's important that that conversation also continues with your community. And I think that's where some things have gotten lost, is typically staff has taken that on and has done it by themselves internally. And when you continue to have it with your community and that conversation with your community, and we're very fortunate that we have an advisory board as well, that when we start putting together the next 5 years of our action plan to Vision Zero, we're going to have a lot of community engagement, and as well as our advisory board helping us to set the next 5 years of goals to accomplish.
Mr. Mayor.
I want to add to that. I don't know if this is on. There we go. If we think about ambitious things that cities try and should be trying, things like end chronic homelessness, these are very difficult things for cities to do. And so for anyone to assert that Vision Zero has failed, they may be saying that a lot of cities that have embraced Vision Zero, either as a philosophy or a goal, haven't achieved zero traffic deaths. But I can tell you from watching our investments, right now this year, what Diana and her team have achieved is reducing traffic violence in Nashville. And so in 5 years, would I expect that we would have zero roadway fatalities? That would be amazing. But I also know how long infrastructure development takes. I know how complicated it is, that even when we issue funding and have the money available, that conversation about Nolensville Road, I mean, that award, the capital spending effort are now more than a year ago, and we're just getting started on some of the important implementation elements. This is not the kind of stuff that happens overnight. And so to be able to think about what we can change in 5 years, it also requires a lot of community conversation and participation. And, if you have been accustomed to having a super highway be the closest major thoroughfare near the neighborhood you live in, watching it transform into something where motorists are safer, pedestrians are safer, transit users are safer, can be an uncomfortable thing to imagine until it's already on the ground. And then you realize not only are you, but also a lot of your neighbors actually walking more, and it starts to become normal. It's fascinating to think about our history. Nashville was literally the first city in the United States to have dedicated right-of-way for transit vehicles, and now we have 0 lanes of that. So we have been through these kinds of transformational cycles before, and our willingness to invest in the idea of Vision Zero remains so important.
All right, I have this question. I'm going to ask this to Nate Meredith. I want to get your thoughts on this too. Nate, you take people, you ride around the city on bikes. Tell me this, how difficult is it to bike around Nashville? What neighborhoods are the trickiest and what neighborhoods are the easiest?
Hey everybody, my name is Nate, and yes, like you said, I founded a bike community called Music City Dope Peddlers. We host group rides weekly. We are finishing up our 3rd year right now, going on a 4th year. But to answer your question, how hard is it to bike around Nashville? It's easy and it's hard at the same time. Yes, you have to hold both things true. On one hand, there has been improvements. There's always safety in numbers. There are dedicated bike lanes. A lot of the communities are a lot closer together than you think if you actually get out there and start biking. However, we have a long way to go. Like, just so many people are still uncomfortable with cyclists on the streets, even though cyclists still have the right of way. These are public right of ways. We all can use the streets together. So I would say, a lot of neighborhoods that are implementing traffic calming measures such as speed cushions, that makes it a lot easier. If you can navigate traffic and everybody's going a little bit slower, it makes it a little easier for everyone to see and be aware of each other. But one of the reasons why I do feel like it's important to ride in groups is to just raise that awareness. A lot of times with my group, I'll take people downtown on Broadway, just in the middle of everything. And surprisingly, it's safer because everybody's going slow on Broadway because there's so much traffic, right? So you wouldn't even think that, but yeah, it's a lot safer there than it is on, let's say, Charlotte Pike, where there is a bike lane, yes. However, it is not protected and cars go extremely fast, and it is very sketchy. So I hope that sheds some light into some of the biking situations in Nashville. How can people join a Music City Dope Peddlers ride? Join us every Friday. We ride at 6 p.m. We meet at Frankie Pierce Park. We have an Instagram page. It is very accessible. You know, just show up with your bike, come out and ride. No fee required.
I've done it. It's fun. Trust them.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Before I moved to Nashville, I like to say I was known as the girl on the big green bike. I had a giant green cargo bike, and I biked everywhere. When we were looking at moving to Nashville, I was actually impressed. Like, oh, look at these bike lanes. There's bike lanes. It seemed a lot more frequently than I was used to seeing in the town that I came from. But when I got here, I realized, oh, they're not really connected. Or where I live in South Nashville, like, I can't really leave my neighborhood. Or at least I'm not, I'm a slow biker. I'm not a speedy, spandex-wearing biker, a cyclist. I'm not comfortable on these corridor busy roads, and even this, if I was to ride on a sidewalk, a lot of those sidewalks are right up against these high-speed lanes of travel. So I'm lucky our office is in East Nashville. When I'm at work, I am comfortable biking to meetings and where I need to go. But I am not the girl on the big green bike right now, and I feel like I am, for a fact, I am driving more than I ever have in my adult life since moving to Nashville.
And Khalil, if you don't mind, I'll throw one more thing into this. When we had our original Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee years ago, we had a guy come and design what was called the Groove Map. And it was so apparent that the city was almost structured like a set of islands, and you were lucky if there was a bridge among the islands to allow you to connect to any other one. And so, for example, if you were trying to ride a bike from here at Looby to Geodis Park, I would wish you well and encourage you to be very careful. If you were to try to ride a bike from Walk by Nashville's office in East Nashville to Vanderbilt University, where there's an incredible density of cyclists, again, I would say good luck, and I would try to help you find some routes, but they're very often not connected. It's a lot of winding. So we do have a lot of work to do.
All right, this question is from the audience, but it's for the audience. How many people in the room took public transit to get here tonight? Raise your hand if you took public transit to get here. One. Two.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Three.
Thank you.
Three. Okay. So the frequency and availability of public transit forced you to drive here. I understand that. Thank you all for participating. And so this is in line with my next question, and anyone who would like to answer, do it. How can we change the car-centric culture of Nashville? I have to add other cities that I've lived, Los Angeles, Albuquerque, New York, I took the bus and I walked. But in Nashville, due to the lack of sidewalks and some of the safety issues, I'm forced to drive almost everywhere.
If you don't offer the option, you can't choose anything else. I mean, this is one of the hardest parts is if I go around the city, and trust me, I have been around this city in the past few years, and there are people, I remember one of the most haunting concepts that came up from the conversation we had with the city over the past couple of years was the woman who said, I'd love to be able to go somewhere to go for a walk without getting in my car first. That teaches you how hard and how disconnected our city is. This is why making a choice together this November, and for more information about what we're proposing, visit nashville.gov/transit. We can change what the choices we have for ourselves, but if there is no sidewalk at your front door, if there is no frequency for the bus that you could take to get here. If it stops running at 6 p.m., if you can't access any other community by any other mode than a car, then it becomes very challenging to think about. I mean, that's not a culture, that's a default, right? So we're trying to make it so that we at least have the option. If you gave me the option any given day to safely be able to walk, bike, use transit, I will be out of everyone else's way in traffic.
All right.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick, two of our strategic goals. First one is we want people to stop dying while they're simply trying to walk and bike around town. And we can get to vision zero for pedestrians and cyclists if everybody just stops walking and biking, but we want the opposite, and that has to come from the culture. And I know Diana speaks a lot about building the culture, and we can encourage people to walk and bike and do educational rides and ride with Music City Dope Peddlers, but that has to be complemented with the building the network, and the infrastructure has to be there so that we feel comfortable to do it on our own.
The one thing I would just like to add, and the mayor actually said, Diana, love what all of you are doing, but make it connect more. And so we are really focused in our plan now about making sure our efforts are connecting. So you can get from one neighborhood to the next neighborhood and move safely. And so that's really where we're focused. And we'd like to do it more. And I think that's what we are all talking to. You know, if we have the funding and the ability to build that infrastructure, we will build it so that folks can make those choices. And I think that's why this conversation is such an important conversation for our community to have. And I would just reemphasize, if you want more information, please go to nashville.gov/transit.
Something that came to mind, I was watching those powerful videos, was the constant phrase of share the road, share the road, share the road. And I was told this when I first moved to Nashville 3 years ago. If you're at a crosswalk, make and maintain eye contact with whoever is walking. And we saw a testimony from a woman who was hit while she was doing exactly that. And here's a question from the audience. How can we convince Nashville drivers that crosswalks are still a thing that requires a yield? And I want to buttress that, support that with a follow-up. Is there a push to make driver's ed mandatory in Tennessee? Driver's ed mandatory.
I would say, education-wise, we're always encouraging folks to be aware of what the rules of the road are. I would say we are always out there providing that information. Anytime I have a chance, to share about the 3-foot rule when it comes to bicyclists, that is something I share out. It's also something else I always like to share out is that if you're on a street that's 45 miles per hour or less, that bicyclist has the right to be there, and you must give them that 3-foot presence so that they are not feeling nervous and unsafe. So education, I think, is really important. I would say that is conversations that we continue to have. But, we're going into our 3rd year of Vision Zero. So our focus really has been on educating where we know crashes are occurring, also doing a lot of engineering and evaluating, and really working with the community on continually improving the infrastructure we have and working toward making it better.
So I'll give Walk Bike Nashville a shout out here, because some of this is, again, going back to, if you're a pedestrian, it's often hard to find a crosswalk. It's not even about the motorist. It's when we looked at the Walk Bike Nashville initial report called Impossible Crossings, it highlighted that there are stretches of road with multiple neighborhoods that you would walk by for distances of a half a mile before you ever even encountered a crosswalk in the first place. If that's the case, then where are you supposed to safely cross in the first place? And that's challenge number one. But we're also members of NACTO, the National Association of County Transportation Officials. They've got a lot of design principles. There are some other wonderful practices with infrastructure design. If anybody has had the opportunity to go experience 2nd Avenue North as we're reinventing it after the bombing of Christmas 2020, there is an example there of a raised crosswalk. this is a wonderful example of how motorists not only have pedestrian visibility, but also infrastructure visibility, and it helps with that calming and safety aspect without actually materially slowing down the throughput of vehicles. I mean, all of this we're trying to do, we want people to have options, we want people to have safe and healthy lives, we want cleaner air, and all of those things are a part of it. But we also want motorists to be able to get where they're going effectively and efficiently, and I think all of these goals are able to be accomplished together.
Yeah. Nate.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. When you asked how do we make drivers more aware of crosswalks, I think to be aware of pedestrians is to become a pedestrian. You know, when I do have bike rides with a group of bikers, we can always tell the cyclists in cars because they give us a wide breath as they pass. You know, they're holding cars behind us, or they're, you know, honking friendly, because they bike and they know to look out for it. So if we build the infrastructure that allow people to walk more, as people become more pedestrian in how they get around, they know to look for it. And, you know, we have people coming, like you said, you come from out of town. I forgot how many people are moving to Nashville every day now. Like, they're coming from places where they walk. So the culture is there. The infrastructure just has to catch up.
And to Nate's point, become a pedestrian. We are in the final week of the Great Commuter Challenge. If you want to learn more about this opportunity, while it's Transportation Demand Management Week, you can learn more at nashconnector.org.
I do want to ask a question about pedestrians as they're walking on the street in terms of lights and street lights. And this comes from the audience. It says numbers say that 75% of pedestrian fatalities happen during dusk or in dark conditions. Is that true? And if so, how would you respond to that darkness?
We do know that the majority of these serious injuries and fatalities are happening when it's dark. And we have a problem. This is something that we talk about regularly with our lights. A lot of our lights are out across Nashville and continue to be. Diane, I don't know if I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about you're retrofitting those lights to try and make that a little better.
So we actually are very fortunate with our partners at NES, and again, thank you, Mayor, because he was actually, when he was a council member, actually was very helpful in getting this initiative across the finish line. But we're currently in the process. We have over, just real quick, 55,000 lights, street lights throughout the county and around. And so we are currently working with NES on upgrading those lights from the current, what we call sodium lights to LED. So it is making the streets brighter. NES has 5 years to get it done. I will share with you they're way ahead, and it's looking like we'll actually get it done in about 3 years. And that is adding significant more lights. And some of the places you can actually really see that difference is along Dickerson and the northern part of Gallatin. And we are focusing on the high injury network first. And that's also been something that our Vision Zero Advisory Board has been extremely passionate about as well. So they have now continued that emphasis, but putting more emphasis as they start moving to the south side of our county to start with lights. But we're super excited about that. One of the things that Complete Street allowed us, and so when the mayor spoke about our Complete Street in Green that he actually reinitiated in January, is we were actually able to add standards for pedestrian lighting, which is really something we haven't really practiced in Nashville and Davidson County. So as we're moving forward, we're working with NES on that pedestrian lighting and what that can look and feel like to give that safety feel to where people are aware and see pedestrians, but also making sure the street lights can serve in that capacity today. So we're super excited. And the one thing I want to tell you about the lights being out as we move forward is the lights that we're putting in are actually now we're putting what we're calling smart nodes on top of them. And the smart nodes do many things, but the main point behind of why we put them smart nodes on them is it's connected to a computer in the back. So if a light is out, we're going to know. And we're going to know we're going to know right away, and we're going to be able to go out and fix that light in 24 hours. Right now, we do not have that ability to do that. So it's like NES actually has a person who spends, that's all they do. They have 2 people that spend 80 hours a week just driving around all over town trying to find lights out, putting in that work order, and then working on getting it fixed. Some of the problems in the lights not working is more than just the pole or the light. It is actually a complete rebuild that we need to do of the street lights, so it's the electrical underground, and we work very closely with on that. And I have to give kudos out to my NDOT team because they work really close to them. I think I see Brian in the office. Yeah, Brian. His team works very closely with them on actually fixing the lighting and the conduits underneath. And so I just got to get a call out because y'all do an incredible job, and that's a lot of hard work. And I have to say thank you, Mayor, because that comes out of our budget so that we can actually stay on top of it. But in about I would say less than 2 years, I feel like we're going to have a really great lighting system that's going to be able to, we're going to know in less than 24 hours something out and have it fixed.
And let's not forget Hub Nashville. So if you are walking around, that's great that you guys are focusing on the high injury network. But I know just a month ago we were walking with my son. A light was out on our street. We did it together. He knows how to look up the pole number. And within a week, it was repaired. So like you said, some of them are more complicated fixes. It'll take longer. But anything that we can do in the meantime to bring attention to lights that are out is going to do nothing but help.
All right, Meredith, I'm going to ask this next question to you. How important is it in all the efforts from Vision Zero to the mayor's transportation referendum that things have an idea of, that things are ADA compliant?
Very important. And I'll go ahead and say ADA compliant that's a super low bar for people that do not have the luxury of walking around on 2 legs or cannot see when the light is turning green or cars that are coming or cannot hear cars that are coming. At a bare minimum, we need to be meeting ADA requirements. And I know that we are required to do that as a city. But that's something I think a lot of us take for granted, is that there's a huge portion of our population that we don't see as often because it's not easy for them to get around. And they are forced to, we complain about the frequency of bus service, but if you rely on access ride, you have to schedule that ride 24 hours in advance. So yes, I think everything that we should be doing with regards to these improvements need to have the ADA and the accessibility piece as top priority.
And that goes into a question about culture. We understand, a lot of people, I've talked to over 2,000 people on the show, so people come in and I understand where the pulse of Nashville is. A lot of folks don't think it's important until it happens to them. What can we do to change that mindset within Nashvillians, particularly when it comes to being on the road and sharing the road, as well as ensuring that the roads are open for people who are going to be here after we're gone?
So I think this is maybe a bit of an answer, Khalil, to both questions. One of the most important hires that I think we made in the mayor's office is Darren Jernigan. Not only is he incredible as a state representative in navigating state and federal issues on our behalf from a policy perspective, but as somebody who is in a wheelchair every day from an accident much earlier in his life, he's also one of the most powerful advocates for equitable access, not just to our public rights of way, but also to buildings. Already today, just his presence in our office over the past year has meant more accessible doorways in City Hall, entrances to and from the building. And when he comes with us to things like the food truck lunch on Dedrick Street every week, it's great to get his perspective on just what it's like to move around the city when there are sudden sidewalk closures or those kinds of things that, to Meredith's point, maybe the baseline infrastructure met the requirements of ADA, but that adaptive infrastructure, when something's being built, repaired, whatever, isn't meeting that test. So he helped us get a disability advisory committee up and running again. That was another one of our important executive orders from just a few months ago. We're very focused on that, and we have embedded in our transportation improvement program real-time 24/7 access to WeGo, the paratransit service, WeGo Access. so that it should be much more accessible to anyone who is disabled in the system on a countywide basis 24/7. So we're trying to take that into account from how we expand and improve access for people with disabilities, but we're also being advised by someone that is actively on our team every day.
You got this one, Juice.
I would invite Diana to talk about the great ADA team at NDOT if she wants to.
Go for it.
Thank you, Mayor. Our team is very focused in on ADA accessibility. It's something that, along with Vision Zero, we're very passionate about. So as we are actually redoing roadways and designing, we're making sure we're building on that accessibility as well. Where there's opportunities to add the signalization for the pedestrians to be aware that, hey, the sounds so that people know to move, and also the vibration that can happen for those that are actually deaf and not hearing that. We provide that. We always make sure we have the visual up as well, and that's really important. And we're also working really close with all of our utilities companies because a lot of our growth has required expansion of roadways, but they didn't necessarily, they expanded the road, but they did not take into consideration that the sidewalk was there, and so they moved poles and put them in the middle of the sidewalk. So now we're working with all our utility companies on moving the poles so they're either the front or the back. And I say utility companies because it's not just NES. All your communication are up on those poles as well. So we work very closely with all of our communication companies as well to get them adjusted. NES is in the process of updating the poles, so we'll be removing the old brown poles and actually fixing the new panels in the sidewalk. So we work very closely with all of this, and it requires a lot of movement and a lot of collaboration with our folks. But we feel very fortunate because our partners in the utility world do get it, and they understand it, and they also want to make sure that they're providing that service for their customers.
I think it's important for us to not be entitled just as able-bodied people, as anybody who uses a public service. If it's not working for everybody, then it's not working. So I invite anybody to go to like 12th Avenue South as a great example. I actually work at Belmont during the day, and just being able to cross that street, you hear the beeps, you hear everything that is going on you see the flashing lights. That is a great example of like what can happen with proper infrastructure. Just changing that whole 12th South corridor changes how people drive. Because I've never had a situation where I was attempting to cross and I pressed the button and a car did not stop. Like, changing how people drive and the way that the road is laid out really actually changes the culture of people in that area. So I encourage you to go to 12 South and just walk around and try that out and see, oh, this is how this could be. It could be like that everywhere.
And that leads to this next question I have. Will individual neighborhoods have impact on the respective safety plans that will affect their communities as Vision Zero, as the transportation referendum, should it pass, as all of this gets implemented and rolled out? Will individual neighborhoods be able to help decide, hey, this is how we want traffic to happen in our neighborhood. These are the walkways, bike lines that we would like to have?
I mean, I'll let Diana jump in here, but I will say one of the most popular programs that she can speak to is the traffic calming program at the neighborhood level, and those are very, very community-driven conversations. So I'll let her speak to that. But yeah, it's one of the reasons. I mean, we embedded in our program design a decade's worth of 70-plus transportation-based programs led by 66,000 points of public input. I mean, we have a lot of it invested in there, but it's also why we don't have, if you go to transit.nashville.gov today, you can see interactive maps that bring you down to your community, your street, your block, about what our expected improvements will be. But what you won't see is that, if we're putting a community transit center like the one just around the corner at Rip Patton, North Nashville, you're not going to see that station design or maybe its exact location, because all of those final design elements will ultimately be done in partnership with the communities that are respectively receiving those improvements.
So, as the mayor had mentioned, traffic calming is one of our most popular programs that we have, and you put the biggest smile on my face when you talked about how you like to go through neighborhoods that have the traffic calming in place, because it does really slow folks down. In today's time, we're all about getting to the next place quickly, and so we are seeing a lot more cut-through traffic, and so the traffic calming program really allows us to think about your front porch, your front door. How can we extend that beyond where you are? How can we extend that so that when people are driving down your street, they're realizing this could be my street? How can I make this street safer? And we'll be a little bit more respectful. So we're super excited about the traffic calming program. We were really excited this past year when our council, thank you again, Mayor, actually we had supplemental dollars, so they actually gave us additional $4 million to do 65 additional traffic calming projects on top of the 100 that we do every year. And trust me, we would love to do more than that, but that's a lot of work. When you think about it, to date, we've actually have over 336 applications that we have approved, and we've actually completed 186 of them. So we're getting better at it, and we're starting to pump them out even more. The other thing I just want to share real quick when we talk about safety is one of the things is school zones. When I got here and I'm looking at the different school zones, nothing is uniform. Nothing was the same. There was not a feel, and I think it was even mentioned in one of the videos, people just zoom right through them, and the children I always consider are our future. And so I think about how we can create a safer zone. So with some of the supplemental dollars that we got, we actually went out today, this summer, and actually put in 15 brand new school zones that included painting and markings on the ground, new signage, new slow downs, everything, so that it had that feel and you knew you were somewhere where you should be moving slow. I have to give a call out, Mayor, if you don't mind, to my team, because what ended up happening is when we did that estimate and asked for that money, which was $400,000, we did it based on what a contractor provided us to get 15 schools done. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't get a contractor to do it, so Philip Jones, who's sitting out there, he pulled a team together, and he did it, sir, and he managed to get 15 done for less than $150,000. So we've now have added another 20 schools that we will be hitting and getting done. So there goes just to show the passion that the team is actually doing and getting Vision Zero and making things safer.
And I will say, too, on this point, everybody in here should probably, I can do it on everybody's behalf if you don't feel compelled to, but a thank you note to Philip and the team for helping us navigate winter weather, because their team of snowplows was out relentlessly through that period. But in addition to that, I will say we invited Nate recently to join our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Meredith's team at Walk Bike Nashville has been deeply involved in our advisory committee process for the Transportation Improvement Program. Diana mentioned the folks who are here who have been part of that Vision Zero process. And we're going to keep all of those things up and running, because it's not just like, hey, one day we did it, we finished our infrastructure and it's all fixed. There's always going to be a neighborhood that feels like they need some improvements to safer streets, or, we have $1 billion backlog for where we should be in terms of equitable access to sidewalks in the entire city. So we are constantly reevaluating, reprioritizing, and we will always have community members directly participating in that.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Last question. All right, here it is. I'm going to ask this one. It's more of a comment than anything, but I know everyone here has dealt with it. It said pitting in roads are unsafe for motorcyclists. I imagine what they're talking about are the potholes that happen in Nashville. Unsafe for motorcyclists, unsafe for pedestrians, unsafe for drivers, unsafe for bikers. So the question that I'm going to ask around that is something entirely unrelated. Okay, two, real quick. Give me a second. 2 questions. How many people have dealt with potholes out here when you're driving? Raise your hand. Most of us. Okay. Well, hopefully, transportation referendum will take care of that. Secondly, is this. In the Vision Zero plan, they talk about a dangerous street such as Nolensville Pike. Will lowering speed limits across the city and surrounding areas Is that a viable option that we could take on? Meredith? And then everyone, I'd love everyone to hear something about this.
Yes, definitely. But I think it's important to know that simply changing the posted speed limit is not the answer. That's not the full answer. And so when we talk about Vision Zero, it's a safe systems approach. It's more than, we have to build our roads the right way. So if you take a 50 mile per hour speed limit road and you just change the sign to 35 and it still has the really wide lanes, it still feels like a highway, people are going to continue to speed down it. And I think that's just something that we talk about a lot is the streets should be self-enforcing. We hear all the time that cars are pulling into bike lanes or they're parking into bike lanes. Well, if bike lanes have a hardened cement barrier, that's not possible. And I think it's the same thing with speeding, is that we can do things to our roads that make it really uncomfortable to speed, and it makes us, the roads are created and designed in a way to foster the speeds and the behavior that we want to see.
I like to take that from both approaches because although I am an avid cyclist, I also am a car enthusiast. Like, I drive a manual transmission, love cars. So I understand the annoyance of speed cushions. I've experienced that directly, but what I think people don't always appreciate is that when we got GPS and when we got Google Maps and when we have ways that give you alternate routes, they're putting you on neighborhood streets that were never designed to accommodate that much traffic. And so now you're driving through somebody's backyard at 40 miles per hour trying to get to your dentist appointment, trying to be like ideally something productive and not just driving like that. So having those speed cushions around really helps to calm that traffic. And just coming from somebody who I recently bought a house maybe a couple years ago, and my neighborhood over in Dickerson has improved that dramatically. I used to walk around and have to, go in people's yards because people are swerving around these corners. Now we have speed cushions and I feel safer to walk. Now I have like a whole family, little baby I got to walk with now. So now I can actually walk like safely with these barriers. So I think those minor annoyances are worth it in the long run. And if you could save one life. And speaking on potholes, I think that's important to mention because you're not out here replacing that asphalt. Like, you're not fixing those potholes. That's a public project because that is public property. So we all share that. Like, as you think about how these roads got here, how they're maintained, it's through tax dollars, it's through our public effort. So keep that in mind when you're driving and you see pedestrians and you see bicyclists that all pay taxes as well to ride and occupy that same road.
And I'm going to jump in front of Diana just real quickly because I have to give a shout out as we're talking about that. We know the hands are up, but I will say this, since that winter weather, and this is the second thank you note to Philip and the incredible team at NDOT, besides pre-treating, then doing 24/7, 365 for more than a week and a half during winter weather, they immediately shifted to pothole repair. And we don't control state routes. We don't have the opportunity to go do Ellington Parkway, Briley Parkway, interstates, on-ramps, and all of those kinds of things. And a lot of state routes are all TDOT. But I will say this, our NDOT team has filled more than 30,000 potholes this year since January. And if you submit a pothole request through Hub Nashville today and it is a local road, unless there are exceptional circumstances, it's going to be filled within 48 hours. This team is on it. They are trying to take care of our roadways. They've paved more than 100 miles of local roadway this year already. And we are fortunate that TDOT and NDOT partner well together. And it's a huge relief to have had a stretch of our urban loop resurfaced recently. We're continuing that coordination. We do pass those requests along to them. We track how long they've been sitting in the system between those two things. But Hub Nashville is one powerful tool, and our amazing team at NDOT is another powerful team that is out here working every day to make this city just a little bit better and a little bit safer. So Diana, Philip, Courtney, thank you.
So I can just add, Hub Nashville is like, we work by that, breathe by that. That is our livelihood. And Stacy's out there and she actually manages it very well for us. But just remember, we can't be everywhere. and we want to be everywhere. And so we do ask the community to help us see things. And so the best way for us to know what's going on is Hub Nashville. So if it's a pothole, if it's a tree that you feel is blocking your ability to see safely, let us know, put it in the hub, okay? Whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference, put it in hub. Dead animals, whatever it is, because we do want to get out there and make that road as safe as possible. And that goes for whether you're driving a car, walking, or biking. If you're walking and you feel like the sidewalk is unsafe or something, put it in the hub, let us know. And as I said, we can't be everywhere, so we're really counting on this partnership with our community to let us know what we need to get out there and get fixed. So thank you for that question, but we are really focused. I always get really kind of upset about potholes because I know how hard my team works at potholes. But again, help us. We want to be out there and we really want to be quick and fast. And again, kudos to the team because they do an amazing job.
All right, that's all the time we have for this evening. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I do want to thank the panelists, Diana Alarcon, Director of NDOT, Nate McDowell, founder of Music City Dope Peddlers, Meredith Montgomery, Executive Director of Walk Bike Nashville, and Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Thank you all for the work you're doing, and thank you for being here. All right. Thanks to all of you. I'm sure there's information of how you can be involved that is outside waiting on it. Get home safe. Be good to each other. Get home real safe, y'all. All right. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.